Have you ever wondered how a conflict can simmer for decades, shaping the political and social dynamics of an entire region? What if I told you that two nations, Israel and Iran, are locked in a battle that isn't just about borders or ideology, but about the future of the Middle East itself? And here's the burning question. Is this shadow war inching closer to an all-out confrontation? To understand the stakes, let's go back to where it all began. The hostility between Israel and Iran wasn't always this intense. Before the Iranian Revolution in 1979, the two nations were allies. Iran, under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, had diplomatic ties with Israel, but the revolution changed everything. The new Islamic Republic, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, adopted a staunchly anti-Israel stance, labeling the Jewish state as the Little Satan. Overnight, former friends became adversaries. Fast forward to today, and the conflict has evolved into one of the most complex and dangerous rivalries in the world. But how did it escalate to this level? And more importantly, where is it headed? Over the past decade, Israel and Iran have engaged in a shadow war. One fought not on traditional battlefields but through covert operations, cyber attacks, and proxy battles. Iran has supported groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and various militias in Syria and Iraq, using them as a way to pressure and attack Israel indirectly. In response, Israel has conducted hundreds of airstrikes on Iranian targets in Syria and other regions, aiming to disrupt weapons transfers and military buildup. But let's pause for a moment. What drives this conflict? At its core, it's about power and survival. For Israel, Iran's nuclear ambitions represent an existential threat. Iran insists its nuclear program is peaceful, but Israel and much of the international community remain unconvinced. Recent intelligence suggests that Iran is closer than ever to weapons-grade uranium. The big question is, will Israel take preemptive action, as it has in the past with Iraq and Syria's nuclear facilities? Or will diplomacy have a chance to prevail? On the Iranian side, the stakes are equally high. Iran views Israel as a Western-backed entity undermining its influence in the Middle East. By supporting proxy groups and maintaining a military presence in Syria, Iran aims to encircle Israel and increase its strategic leverage. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Iran's alliances with major powers like Russia and China add a global dimension to this conflict. The US, a key ally of Israel, has also been deeply involved. Billions of dollars in military aid flow to Israel annually, strengthening its defense systems like the Iron Dome, which intercepts rockets and missiles. However, this support fuels resentment in Tehran, which sees American involvement as direct interference. So here's a question for you. Could this rivalry drag superpowers into a larger conflict? And if so, what would that mean for global stability? Let's zoom in on recent events. In the past few months, the tension has reached a boiling point. Israeli airstrikes have targeted Iranian positions in Syria, reportedly killing high-ranking officials. In retaliation, Iran has escalated its proxy attacks, launching rockets from Gaza and Lebanon while increasing its drone capabilities. This tit-for-tat exchange has left the region teetering on the brink of war. But there's another dimension to this conflict: cyber warfare. Both nations have invested heavily in cyber capabilities, targeting each other's critical infrastructure. Remember the Stuxnet virus? It was reportedly developed by Israel and the US to sabotage Iran's nuclear program, setting a precedent for digital warfare. In today's interconnected world, could cyber attacks become the new front line of this conflict? The impact of this rivalry isn't confined to Israel and Iran. Neighboring countries like Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq are caught in the crossfire, facing political instability and economic hardship. Meanwhile, global oil markets remain sensitive to any escalation, as the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping lane, could become a flashpoint. Have you ever thought about how a regional conflict could affect your daily life, from gas prices to global security? Now, let's talk about the people. Both Israelis and Iranians live under the constant shadow of conflict. In Israel, citizens rely on bomb shelters and air raid sirens, while in Iran, economic sanctions have crippled the economy, leaving millions struggling to make ends meet. Yet, amidst this adversity, there are voices of peace, activists and ordinary citizens who dream of a future where these two nations can coexist. Could their voices ever rise above the drums of war? As we approach the conclusion of this story, the stakes couldn't be higher. Israel's new government has vowed to take a tougher stance on Iran, while Tehran shows no signs of backing down. The international community is watching closely, with some calling for urgent diplomacy and others preparing for the worst. What's next in this unfolding saga? Could a single misstep ignite a war that engulfs the entire region? Or is there still hope for a diplomatic breakthrough? This isn't just a story of two nations. It's a story about the future of the Middle East, the role of superpowers, and the resilience of people caught in the crossfire. If history has taught us anything, it's that conflicts like these rarely end without significant consequences. So, what do you think? Is there a path to peace? Or are we destined to see this rivalry escalate further? Let us know in the comments. Let's hope for a world where dialogue triumphs over division. Globe showing Europe-Africa victory hand. As we stand on the edge of this potentially catastrophic conflict, it's crucial to ask ourselves, what would it take for both Israel and Iran to step back from the brink? Is there any possibility for peace, or are these nations destined to remain locked in an endless cycle of hostility? Both sides have their grievances, their reasons for distrust, and their determination to emerge victorious. But is the cost of war truly worth the potential outcome? Could there be a shift in the tide, a change in leadership, or even an unprecedented diplomatic breakthrough? It's essential to remember that the people most affected by this rivalry are not the governments or military commanders, but the ordinary citizens. In both Israel and Iran, families live in fear, children grow up under the constant threat of war, and every decision made by political leaders can alter the course of countless lives. So, the question remains, will the next generation continue to inherit this conflict, or is there still a chance for reconciliation? The international community must also consider the broader implications. If this conflict escalates further, what role will countries like the United States, Russia, and China play? How will global alliances shift in response to a larger Middle Eastern war? And perhaps most importantly, what kind of future do we want to build? One shaped by endless division and conflict, or one based on cooperation, mutual understanding, and peace? As we watch this situation unfold, let us hope that reason and diplomacy prevail. Because in the end, no matter where you stand on the issue, one thing is certain: a peaceful future is better for all of us. The stakes are too high for any other outcome. Let's continue to raise our voices for peace, to demand that the world works together to end violence and suffering. Let's challenge ourselves to look beyond borders, beyond ideologies, and see the humanity in one another. We can only hope that someday, the leaders of Israel and Iran will follow this same path, embracing diplomacy and a shared vision for a better, more peaceful world. Thank you for watching, and let's continue to stay informed, stay engaged, and work towards a brighter future for us all.